Close your eyes and let the weight of the day settle into the mattress beneath you. Listen to the river, not the rush of a mountain stream or the roar of a waterfall, but the heavy rhythmic sighing of the Thames as it licks against the cold stone embankments of London in the year 1895. In the deep heart of the city, where the mist turns every gas lamp into a pale, ghostly orb of amber light, something impossible has just surfaced from the black pulling water. It is a sound you recognize in your soul, yet one you shouldn't hear on a night as quiet as this. It is the slow, sodden drip of a book, a heavy leather-bound volume that was officially recorded as burned to ashes 23 years ago. The fire of the past claimed it was gone forever, but the cold water of the present has decided to give it back. Welcome to a night where history refuses to stay buried, and where the silence speaks louder than any shout. We often think of the past as something solid and unmoving, locked away in dusty vaults or carved into granite monument. But tonight, history is fluid. It is leaking through the cracks of Victorian London, carried by the rising tide in the form of a warped, salt-stained messenger. This is not a tale of a loud crime or a frantic chase through the cobblestone streets. It is a quiet, unfolding revelation, an intellectual lullaby designed to carry your mind into the depths of a forgotten world. A single volume, heavy with silt and ancient secrets, has been found near the Southwark mudflats. Its ink has bled into the fibers of the paper, forming patterns that look like forgotten maps, whispering of a library that the world was told no longer exists. As the rain begins its steady hypnotic patter against the windowpane of our sanctuary, we begin to realize that some truths are simply too heavy to sink, and some fires are not hot enough to consume the spirit of a secret. Imagine the physical texture of that paper as it rests in the damp palm of a discoverer. It is swollen and delicate, smelling of river salt, old glue, and the metallic tang of the London fog. In the late 19th century, this city was built in layers, a labyrinth where every new building stood upon the ruins of an older, darker story. On this gray March morning, the fog clings to the jagged rooftops like a heavy velvet shroud, muffling the sharp clip-clop of horse-drawn carriages and the distant, lonely calls of the dock workers. To the common eye, this drowned object is mere debris, a piece of trash tossed aside by the currents. But to a mind that finds solace in the impossible, it is the first note of a deep, subterranean symphony that has been waiting for decades to be played. The mystery we are about to enter requires no adrenaline and no sudden movements. It requires only your breath and your willingness to let the city's shadows guide you. We are not chasing a phantom through the dark, nor are we fleeing from a hidden danger. We are recovering a legacy. We are walking back through the mist to find a collection of knowledge so forbidden, so dangerous to the established order of the era, that it was systematically erased from the annals of human history in the year 1872. And yet, here it sits before us, cold and wet, challenging everything we thought we knew about the great fire of the Pike Library. The river has a memory that defies the flames, and tonight, it is choosing to share that memory with us, one saturated, fragile page at a time. The chill of the Thames air begins to fade now, pulled away by the thought of a sanctuary nearby. We are drifting away from the mud of the riverbank, moving through the silent, lamp-lit alleys where the light reflects off the wet stones like spilled silver. We are heading toward a place of warmth, a place where the air is thick with the scent of tobacco smoke and the steady, comforting scratch of a fountain pen against parchment. The journey from the cold water to the hearth is a short one in distance, but it changes the very nature of our search. We leave the heavy mist of the river behind, feeling the world become smaller and safer as we approach a familiar door. High above the street, a single window glows with a soft, inviting light, promising the answers that only a restless, brilliant mind can provide in the dead of night. The water was just the beginning of the story. The fire is merely a ghost. And the truth is waiting for us, patient and still, inside the quiet firelit sanctuary of Baker Street. We move now from the dampness of the docks to the drying heat of the fire, where the first page is about to be turned. The heavy door of the street below closes with a distant, muffled thud, leaving the damp chill of the London morning outside where it belongs. As we move up the 17 steps, the air begins to change, growing thicker, warmer, and infused with the scent of a life lived in pursuit of the unknown. We have arrived in the sitting room of 221B Baker Street, a sanctuary of organized chaos and intellectual repose. The transition is complete. We have moved from the vast, indifferent flow of the river to the intimate, firelit world of the mind. Outside, the early spring drizzle of 1895 continues its relentless march against the window panes. A soft, percussive tapping that only serves to emphasize the profound safety of this interior world. It is a morning for lingering over shadows, for the slow unraveling of knots, and for the deep comfort of a room that has seen 1,000 mysteries born and resolved within its wall. The atmosphere here is a tactile tapestry of history and habit. There is the sharp, medicinal tang of chemical reagents from the laboratory table in the corner, softened by the earthy, dusty aroma of old paper and the rich, musk-like scent of shag tobacco that clings to the heavy velvet curtains. On this particular morning, the floor is nearly invisible beneath a sea of clay rubbings and ancient Mesopotamian seals. Sherlock Holmes is not a man who rests in the traditional sense. His mind is a machine that requires constant fuel, even in the quietest hours. He is currently kneeling upon the rug, his thin, dexterous fingers moving with the precision of a surgeon over a series of wax impressions. There is a quiet, meditative intensity to his movements, a rhythmic grace that mirrors the steady ticking of the grandfather clock in the corner. Each clay fragment is a piece of a world that vanished thousands of years ago, and in the stillness of the room, you can almost hear the echoes of the desert sands, a stark contrast to the wet pavement just a few feet beyond the glass. The clutter of the room is not a burden. It is a map of a brilliant consciousness, a collection of anchors that keep the mind grounded. Books are piled high on every available surface, their spines cracked and worn by years of devoted study. Scientific charts are tacked to the walls, and the mantelpiece is a museum of the strange Persian slipper stuffed with tobacco, a jackknife transfixing a stack of unanswered correspondence, and the subtle, metallic gleam of the magnifying glass resting beside a half-finished cup of cold tea. This is a space where time does not press against you. It is a space designed for the long, slow work of thinking. As Holmes continues his study of the seals, the only sounds are the occasional scratch of a quill pen, the soft rustle of a turning page, and the distant, comforting rumble of a passing carriage on the cobblestones below. Everything is as it should be. The world is at peace, and the mind is at play. The fire in the grate is a living presence, a rhythmic heart beating at the center of the room. It crackles softly, sending small, amber sparks upward into the soot-stained chimney, casting long dancing shadows across the rows of leather-bound volumes that line the wall. Beside the hearth, a silver kettle begins its low melodic hiss, a precursor to the ritual of the morning tea. The steam rises in thin, swirling ribbons, catching the pale morning light and turning it into something ethereal and shimmering. This is the peak of physical grounding, the warmth of the fire on your skin, the smell of wood smoke, and the absolute certainty that within these four walls, no harm can reach you. The room is a fortress of reason, a cradle of quietude, where the complexities of the outside world are distilled into their simplest, most manageable parts. You can feel the tension leaving your shoulders as you watch the flames. The orange glow reflecting in the mahogany furniture, creating an environment where the only requirement is to exist and to listen. The tranquility is gently broken, not by an alarm or a sudden noise, but by a familiar domestic rhythm that fits perfectly into the stillness. There is a light, rhythmic tapping at the door, the distinctive knock of Mrs. Hudson, carrying with her the quiet efficiency of the household. She enters with the practiced silence of one who has learned to navigate the eccentricities of her most famous tenant without disturbing the air. In her hand is a small silver tray, and upon it lies a single visiting card, its white surface stark and crisp against the polished metal. Holmes does not look up immediately. He finishes the delicate task of measuring a seal with his brass calipers before extending a long, pale hand to take the card. His eyes, sharp and gray, scan the elegant script. It is a visitor from a bookshop in Pimlico, a man named Mr. Allard, who has braved the rain to bring something more than a message. The card smells faintly of old vellum and damp wool, a bridge between the street and the study. The arrival of the card does not disrupt the peace. It merely focuses it. Mrs. Hudson sets down a fresh pot of tea, the liquid pouring into the porcelain cups with a clear, resonant sound that marks the passage from solitary study to social inquiry. The steam from the fresh tea carries the scent of bergamot, orange peel, and honey, a final layer of sensory comfort before the work of the day begins. Holmes rises from the floor, his long limbs unfolding with a slow, deliberate grace, shaking off the dust of Mesopotamia to face the mystery of the present. The visitor is already on his way up the stairs, his footsteps muffled by the heavy carpet, creating a sense of anticipation that is as smooth as a silk thread being pulled through a needle. We are ready now to welcome the world back in, but only on our own terms, within the safety of this firelit chamber. The messenger from the bookshop brings with him the weight of the water we saw at the riverbank. But here, in the sanctuary of Baker Street, that weight can be measured, dried, and understood. The fire burns steady, the tea is warm in the hand, and the door is about to open to a man who holds the first real key to the drowned library. We remain in this state of deep, grounded comfort as we prepare to hear the story of Mr. Allard, a man who has seen a ghost in his inventory and has come to the only place in London where ghosts are invited to speak their truth. The tea is poured, the room is quiet, and the mystery is standing at the threshold, waiting for our leave to enter. The door opens, and with it comes a swirl of cool, damp air that quickly dissolves into the pervasive and protective warmth of our sitting room. Mr. Allard, the bookseller from Pimlico, steps inside, and he is a man who carries the very essence of his trade upon his person like a second skin. He is slight of frame, with spectacles that seem to catch and hold the amber glow of the fire, and his fingertips are permanently stained with the faint grayish hue of printer's ink and the fine centuries-old dust of forgotten basements. He moves with a nervous, bird-like energy. Yet, there is a deep, inherent reverence in the way he clutches a package wrapped in heavy, oil-stained canvas. As he sheds his damp overcoat, the scent of wet wool mingles with the room's established aroma of tobacco and old paper, creating a new, complex layer of sensory detail that anchors us firmly in this moment of quiet, scholarly discovery. He is invited to sit in the large, leather-bound chair, and as he settles against the cushions, the atmosphere remains one of profound and unshakable safety. There is no urgency here, no shouting, and no rush. There is only the patient, scholarly curiosity of men who understand that the greatest secrets of the world are often hidden in the smallest, most overlooked details. Mr. Allard's hands tremble slightly as he begins to unwrap his burden, the canvas rustling with a dry, rhythmic sound that mimics the rain still whispering its secrets against the window pane. He speaks in a voice that is soft, melodic, and hesitant, a scholar's voice, explaining how this singular object came into his possession at the Pimlico War, brought to him by a confused dock worker. He treats the package not as merchandise to be sold, but as a fragile survivor of a great and terrible catastrophe. And we, as silent observers, are invited to share in this quiet intellectual vigil. When the last layer of heavy canvas is finally pulled back, the artifact is revealed in the full light of the lamp. It is a theological treatise, dated 1821. Its leather spine cracked like sun-baked earth, and its edges warped into elegant, permanent waves by the relentless, soaking action of the river water. The cover, which might have once been a proud and deep crimson, has faded to the haunting color of a bruised sunset or a dried rose. Holmes leans forward in his chair, his long, shadow-like fingers reaching out across the table, but he does not grab the object. Instead, he hovers his hand just inches above it, his touch as light and respectful as a breath, acknowledging the immense fragility of the waterlogged paper. This is a fragment of the Pike collection, or, rather, a ghost of a legacy that was supposed to be dead. To any other man in London, this is merely a ruined, worthless book. But in the stillness of this room, it is a piece of a puzzle that defies the very laws of time, fire, and destruction. As Holmes begins his formal examination, the pace of the world outside seems to stop entirely, leaving us in a pocket of suspended time. The only reality that remains is the warm pool of lamplight on the mahogany table, and the delicate, yellowed pages that Holmes begins to turn with the aid of a slender silver letter opener. The paper makes a soft, rhythmic clicking sound as each page is encouraged to yield, a sound that is strangely hypnotic and soothing, much like the steady crackle of the fire behind us. We are looking at a miracle of survival that challenges the records of the city. You see, the Pike Library was a legendary collection of rare, ancient, and controversial texts, a repository of human thought that was officially recorded by every authority as having been entirely consumed by a catastrophic fire in the summer of 1872. For over 20 years, the world has believed that these specific words were nothing but ash and smoke, scattered to the indifferent winds of history. Yet, here the evidence lies, cold, damp, and indisputably real under the magnifying glass. The reveal of this truth is not a shock to the nervous system, but rather a deepening of the dream we are sharing. A question hangs in the air, thick and heavy like the incense of an old cathedral. How can a book that turned to ash in 1872 wash up in the Thames in the year 1895, looking as though it had only been submerged for a matter of days or weeks? Holmes's movements become even more deliberate and slow, his glass catching the light as he peers into the dark gutter of the binding. He is not merely looking at the printed text of the treatise. He is searching the silent spaces in between the words. His silence is not an empty thing. It is a heavy, thoughtful, and weighted silence that draws us deeper into the heart of the mystery. We find ourselves leaning in, captivated by the sight of his pale, steady hand moving over the ancient vellum, tracing the path of a story that has survived both the hunger of the flame and the weight of the flood. There is a profound, soul-deep sense of peace in watching a master at work in his natural element. Holmes handles the book with a tenderness that borders on the spiritual, his thumb occasionally smoothing out a wrinkled corner of a page, as if he were comforting a wounded, sentient creature. Cadnil, tea. We breathe in the scent of the drying paper as the heat of the room begins to work upon it, a complex, evocative aroma of vanilla, aged almond, and old river salt. We feel the absolute security of being in the presence of a man for whom no riddle is permanent, and no shadow is too dark to pierce. The fire in the grate shifts, a log settling with a soft, resonant thud, and a brief spray of amber sparks. And for a long moment, this room feels like the only place in the entire world where the truth is finally being told. We are safe here, protected by the sturdy walls of Baker Street and the immense, invisible shield of Holmes's intellect. But as the examination reaches the middle of the volume, the scholarly calm begins to take on a new, sharper, and more electric edge. Holmes stops his turning. His gaze freezes, locked onto a particular passage in the 3rd chapter. He does not speak, but the very air in the room seems to hum with a new and different frequency. He tilts the book slightly toward the lamp, allowing the yellow light to graze the surface of the paper at a sharp angle. There, in the pale margins, are markings that should not, by any logic of the physical world, exist. They are not the faded brown ink of the early 19th century, nor are they the blurred stains of the river's silt. They are fresh, precise, and written in a distinctive shorthand that bridges the vast gap between the ancient world and the modern era. These markings are a silent cry from the depths, a deliberate message left by someone who knew with absolute certainty that the book would be found and brought to this very table. The impossible has, through the steady application of observation, become the inevitable. We are no longer just looking at a ruined book. We are looking at a map, a hidden guide left by a hand that should have been dust a generation ago. The transition is subtle and masterful, shifting us from the static comfort of the study to the threshold of a much larger, darker, and more winding investigation. The mystery of the fire was only the shroud. The truth is hidden in the fresh ink that refuses to fade, and the symbols that point toward a London we have never seen. As Holmes finally looks up, his eyes reflecting the dancing, restless flames of the hearth, we realize that the quiet, nervous tale of a bookseller has just become a gateway into a labyrinth that stretches far beneath the very streets we walk upon. We are ready to follow the ink, wherever it may lead. The room seems to draw inward, the walls draped in velvet shadows that dance in a slow, rhythmic ballet to the fading embers in the grate. We have moved beyond the initial shock of the physical book and into the silent, microscopic world of the evidence itself. Sherlock Holmes adjusts the brass lamp on the table, the mechanism clicking with a sharp, clean resonance that punctuates the stillness. The pool of yellow light intensifies, spilling across the warped vellum like a golden sunrise over a landscape of ancient, rolling hills. His magnifying glass descends, a circular shield of polished crystal that brings the impossible into a sharp, undeniable focus. He beckons with a slight, almost imperceptible movement of his head, inviting us to look not at the large printed words of the 1821 treatise, but deep into the dark gutter of the binding, where the shadows of the past usually choose to hide. There, nestled against the very spine of the book, are the symbols. They are microscopic, etched with a precision that defies the natural, inevitable tremor of a human hand. These are not letters belonging to any known alphabet, nor are they the erratic, chaotic stains left by the river's silt. They are ghostly marginalia, tiny, geometric ciphers that seem to shimmer and breathe under the magnification of the lens. As we gaze upon them, the world outside the walls of Baker Street feels infinitely distant, a forgotten memory of noise and movement. There is a hypnotic, soul-deep quality to the repetition of these marks. They are rhythmic, almost musical in their silent arrangement. Each tiny, deliberate stroke of ink is an act of preservation, a quiet shout from a brilliant mind that knew its physical body was failing, but its message must endure through the ages. We find our focus narrowing, our breathing automatically sensing with the slow, steady ticking of the grandfather clock in the shadows, as we lose ourselves entirely in the minute geometry of these secret signs. Holmes speaks, and his voice is a low, melodic murmur that barely ripples the profound silence of the study. He explains that these symbols are a highly specialized shorthand, a linguistic bridge used by certain underground scholarly circles in the mid-Victorian era, men who dealt in forbidden truths, suppressed histories, and the weight of forgotten knowledge. But the true enigma, the thing that makes the heart beat a little slower in wonder, lies in the nature of the ink itself. He brushes a long, pale finger near a symbol. It does not smear, nor does it show the characteristic faded brown hue of 20 years spent in a watery grave. This ink is fresh. It is a deep, obsidian black, sitting proudly atop the fibers of the paper, rather than being absorbed and blurred by them over decades. This book, which every historical record claims was burned to ash in the Great Fire of 1872, has been annotated by a living, breathing hand in the present year of 1895. The puzzle deepens further as Holmes pulls a second object from the shadows of his coat pocket, another book, found only days prior by a mudlark at Lambeth Pier. This one is a smaller, more intimate volume, a collection of Gnostic fragments, similarly waterlogged and similarly dead according to the official archives of the British Museum. He lays it side by side with the first volume on the mahogany surface. The light of the lamp bridges the gap between them, and as he turns the fragile pages of the second book to the corresponding chapter, the same ghostly marginalia appear in the margins. It is a mirror image of a secret mind. The symbols in the first book provide the key to the ciphers in the second. They are not merely random, fortunate finds. They are carefully curated parts of a cohesive whole, a scattered intellect being reconstructed page by page, drop by drop, from the cold mud of the Thames. The realization settles over the room like a soft, heavy blanket of fog. The books are appearing in a deliberate mathematical sequence. This is not a series of lucky accidents, but a trail of breadcrumbs left by a master of patience, a slow-motion delivery of a drowned library. Someone is releasing these treasures into the river at specific, calculated intervals, weighing the tides, the shifting currents of the Thames, so that they wash ashore at the precise locations where they will be noticed by those with the eyes to see. It is a communication through the medium of the water itself, a silent, liquid dialogue between a ghost and a detective. The books are a map, a topographical chart of a hidden history, and we are currently standing at the very first landmark of a very long journey. The sense of being part of something vast, ancient, and purposeful grows within us. A quiet, intellectual thrill that keeps the mind engaged at a low, humming frequency, far below the threshold of stress or wakefulness. Holmes sinks back into the depths of his armchair, the magnifying glass resting forgotten on the table like a fallen moon. He turns his head toward the window, his profile sharp and meditative against the dark, rain-slicked glass. Outside, the London night is a blur of blue-black shadows and the shimmering, distorted reflections of gas lamps on the wet pavement. He remains motionless for a long time, lost in a labyrinth of his own construction, his mind traveling through the hidden sluices, forgotten tunnels, and secret watercourses that run beneath the city's aging skin. We watch him, and in his absolute stillness, we find our own. The rain continues its hypnotic, percussive song against the glass, a natural white noise that blankets the world in a sense of profound, holy isolation. We are safe in this high, firelit chamber, suspended far above the messy reality of the streets, watching the master of reason wait for the next piece of the celestial pattern to fall into place. The silence is thick, rich, and nourishing, smelling of old leather, drying vellum, and the faint, lingering salt of the river. It is a moment of pure, unadulterated immersion, where the boundaries between the present moment and the distant past begin to soften and dissolve. We are no longer merely listeners to a story. We are active participants in a silent, nocturnal vigil for a library that was lost but refused to die. The ghostly marginalia are burned into our mind's eye now, a secret language of dots and lines that promises to reveal the location of a treasure that fire could not kill and water could not hide. The room feels smaller and more intimate now, as if the mystery itself has drawn a protective circle around us, shielding us from the chaos of the outside world while we prepare for the next step of the journey. As the minutes stretch into a seamless golden flow of time, the visual details of the study begin to blur into a singular, comforting texture of safety. The velvet of the chair, the dark grain of the mahogany, and the distant, hazy glow of the street lamp outside all harmonize into a state of total intellectual absorption. We are not just hearing a narrative, we are inhabiting the very thought process of the investigation, feeling the weight of each discovery as if it were our own. Every tiny stroke of the pen we imagined earlier now feels like a steady heartbeat, patient and eternal. There is no hurry to find the final answer, for the beauty of this puzzle lies in its gradual, elegant unfolding. In this sanctuary, the heavy weight of the world is replaced by the light, airy weight of curiosity, a sensation that carries the mind away from daily concerns and into the hallowed, silent halls of a library that shouldn't exist. Holmes finally stirs. His movement is fluid, quiet, and inevitable as a shadow passing over a wall. He does not turn back to the table, but speaks directly to the window, his voice carrying the immense weight of a decision made in the deepest reaches of thought. He observes, almost to himself, that to find the true source of the water, one must have the courage to move against the current. The books are appearing at the wharves and the busy piers, but their journey begins in the quiet, stagnant, and forgotten reaches of the river, perhaps near the ancient bookstores and crumbling warehouses of Pimlico. The transition is subtle but firm. The period of quiet, stationary contemplation is over, and the primal need for physical movement begins to stir in the air. We are leaving the safety of the lamplight, not with a jolt of energy, but with a steady, purposeful intent. We are going to the source. We are going to Pimlico to find a man who speaks in the language of ink and water. And as we prepare to depart, the rain outside seems to beckon us, a soft, rhythmic invitation into the very heart of the London fog. The transition from the protective warmth of the hearth to the cool, expansive embrace of the London morning is not a jolt to the senses, but rather a gentle and inevitable unfolding of the spirit. We leave the sanctuary of Baker Street, descending the 17 familiar steps as the world expands once more into the soft, monochromatic palette of a city waking up beneath a heavy shroud of silver mist. The air outside is crisp and carries the sharp metallic tang of morning rain on iron railings, providing a refreshing contrast to the heavy lingering scent of tobacco and aged paper we have left behind. We step into the waiting hansom cab, the dark leather of the seat feeling cool and smooth beneath us, and as the driver clicks his tongue in a soft habitual signal, the rhythmic hollow clip-clop of the horse's hooves upon the wet cobblestones begins. It is a steady hypnotic beat, a natural metronome for the city's ancient heart that lulls the mind into a profound state of walking meditation. As we travel toward the narrow, winding side streets of Pimlico, the world beyond the cab window becomes a blur of silhouettes and soft-edged shadows. The gas lamps are still lit against the gloom, their yellow glow struggling to pierce the encroaching daylight, creating isolated pools of amber on the wet pavement that shimmer briefly and then fade into the gray as we pass. London in this state is a true dreamscape, a place where the boundaries between the physical world and the imagined past are incredibly thin. The movement of the carriage is swaying and fluid, a gentle, side-to-side rocking that encourages the spirit to drift away from the present. We are moving through a landscape of profound silence, broken only by the occasional rhythmic splash of water under the heavy wheels and the distant, muffled calls of a city slowly beginning its daily ritual. Pimlico reveals itself through a labyrinth of increasingly narrow and silent alleys, where the brick houses seem to lean inward as if sharing long-held secrets of their own. The fog here is thicker, more stationary, clinging to the damp brickwork and effectively dampening the sound of our arrival. We stop eventually before a storefront that seems to have grown directly out of the shadows Featherstone's bookshop. It is a narrow, unassuming building, its windows clouded by years of atmospheric neglect and the persistent damp of the nearby river. But behind that glass lies a world that time has forgotten. As we step out of the cab, the transition is seamless and quiet. We move from the moving meditation of the carriage to the deep, stationary meditation of the shop itself. Entering Featherstone's is like stepping into a silent tomb of paper and forgotten thoughts. The air inside is heavy, perfectly still, and incredibly dry, a stark and immediate contrast to the misty, humid streets outside. It is a scent that acts as an immediate sedative to the senses, the complex smell of decaying calfskin, drying animal glue, and the fine, sweet dust of 1,000 forgotten folios. The silence here is absolute and heavy, a physical weight that settles comfortably over our shoulders, inviting us to speak only in whispers, or perhaps not at all. The shop is a dense forest of towering shelves that reach upward into the gathering darkness of the ceiling. There are long rows of books, sagging visibly under the collective weight of centuries. We move deeper into the recesses of the shop, our footsteps entirely muffled by a thick layer of dust and the worn remains of old Persian rugs. In the shadowed corners, ancient plaster busts of long-dead philosophers and poets look down with blind, wide eyes, their surfaces chipping away in tiny, silent flakes that rest upon the wooden shelves like a fall of winter snow. There is a profound sense of peace in this slow decay, a quiet reminder that while empires rise and fall, the written word remains, patient, still, and eternal. We find ourselves tracing the faded spines of books with our eyes titles in Latin, Greek, and Old English, all resting in a hallowed, hushing twilight that feels as though it could last forever. This is the peak of sensory immersion, where the very atmosphere seems to breathe with the silent weight of the past. Holmes moves, with a ghostly, practiced silence toward the back of the shop, where the proprietor, a man as weathered and fragile as his own inventory, waits in the deep shadows. There is no need for grand introductions or loud inquiries. Holmes's request is specific and whispered a search for a ghost within a ghost. We watch as the old man's gnarled, ink-stained hands reach for a ledger that has not been opened in decades. The sound of the spine cracking is like a dry twig snapping in a winter forest, a sharp, clean break in the heavy silence that only serves to deepen the stillness that followed. And then the discovery is made, buried beneath a stack of mundane, everyday ledgers is the original Pike Library catalog from the year 1869. It is a thin, unassuming volume bound in plain cloth. But as Holmes opens it, we realize we are looking at the blueprint of a ghost. This was the master list of the collection before the great catastrophe, the final record of everything that was officially supposed to have been lost to the flames. Finding it here, in the dim, flickering light of a Pimlico basement, feels like recovering a vital piece of a shattered soul. It is the anchor we have been searching for, the undeniable proof that the drowned books are not random relics, but parts of a meticulously curated and intentional whole. The scholarly calm of the shop is deeply restorative to the mind. We spend a long, unhurried moment simply existing in the presence of this find, watching the dust motes dance in the single sliver of light that falls from a high, grime-streaked window. The world outside, with its noise, its rush, and its modern concerns, does not exist within these walls. We are safe in the company of the dead, surrounded by the quiet, enduring dignity of their thoughts. The scent of the old folios is a perfume of the intellect, grounding us in the reality of the search, while allowing the mind to remain in a state of tranquil, undisturbed focus. The stillness is eventually interrupted by a soft, rhythmic splashing from the street outside, the unmistakable sound of running feet on wet, slick stone. The door to the shop creaks open on tired hinges, admitting a swirl of cold mist and a young messenger boy, his cap dripping and his face flushed red from the morning cold. He carries a small rectangular parcel wrapped in the exact same oil-stained canvas we first saw at Baker Street. He does not speak a word, but offers the package to Holmes with a hand that is blue from the damp and the cold. It is a third book. It has just been pulled from the reeds near the Chelsea Reach, barely an hour ago, still dripping with the secrets of the tide. The arrival of this third volume marks the end of our walking meditation and the beginning of a new, deeper chapter. The mystery is no longer merely waiting for us to find it. It is actively following us, reaching out through the hands of the city's poorest and most invisible to find its way back to the light. The transition is soft and natural, a gentle nudge back into purposeful action. As Holmes takes the wet package, the sharp scent of the river salt once again fills the dry, dusty air of the bookshop, a potent reminder that the water is still rising and the story is far from over. We prepare to leave the dusty piece of Featherstones, carrying the catalogue of the dead and the latest survivor of the flood, moving back out into the gathering fog, where the next trail of ink awaits our discovery. We return once more to the profound sanctuary of Baker Street. Though the atmosphere of the room has subtly transformed during our brief absence in the misty streets of Pimlico, the dusty, bone-dry air of the bookshop has been replaced by the familiar, sharp scent of Sherlock Holmes's chemical experiments and the deeply comforting, low-frequency hum of the fireplace. The transition back into this hallowed space is like a long, slow, and restorative exhale, a deliberate return to the center of a world where all things, no matter how chaotic or impossible they may seem, can eventually be measured, mapped, and understood. The third book, still noticeably damp and cool from its long journey through the Chelsea Reach, lies open upon the mahogany table, its fragile pages weighted down by heavy brass calipers to prevent them from curling as they slowly dry in the steady warmth of the room. Holmes has cleared the center of the large table, pushing aside the ancient Mesopotamian seals and clay fragments to make a sacred space for a large, translucent sheet of fine vellum. Upon this sheet, he has already begun to carefully trace the Ghostly Marginalia from the first two volumes. And now, with the arrival of the third survivor, the final corner of the grand pattern is ready to be laid. There is an inherently hypnotic, rhythmic quality to his work in this hour, a predictable and soothing investigation pattern that invites us to let our wandering minds drift alongside his. He moves between the three books with the effortless grace of a master weaver, his keen eyes darting from one set of ciphers to the next with a silent, focused intensity. He uses a fine-tipped pen to overlay the symbols onto the central vellum sheet, the black ink flowing in a steady obsidian stream that seems to vibrate with meaning. As the symbols from the three different volumes are superimposed and perfectly aligned, they begin to lose their individual identity and merge into a singular, cohesive, and beautiful image. The emotional goal of this moment is one of rhythmic discovery, a slow unfolding of a hidden truth. We are not looking for a sudden, jarring explosion of reality, but rather a gradual dawning of light through a thick fog. As we watch the symbols align under Holmes's steady hand, we realize with a sense of quiet awe that they are not linguistic in nature at all. They do not form words to be read, but lines to be followed. They do not speak of abstract philosophies, but of tangible, hidden geography. Under the steady, amber glow of the lamp, the ciphers reveal themselves to be intricate directional indicators of a complex, hidden cartography of the city's ancient and forgotten watercourses. These are not maps of the bright streets we walk upon by day, but of the dark veins and arteries that pulse beneath the heavy pavement, the Fleet, the Tyburn, and the Effra, the lost rivers of London that have been forced underground by centuries of urban expansion and progress. The body of the mystery begins to take a solid, undeniable shape, moving with the predictable, soothing pulse of a heartbeat. Holmes traces a delicate line from the Pimlico wharf, moving through the subterranean sluices of Westminster, and down toward the dark, silent reaches of the Southwark mudflats. The microscopic markings in the margins of the drowned books indicate depth, the precise rate of flow, and the exact timing of the lunar tides. It is an engineering of secrets, a manual for a ghost who wishes to navigate the immense city without ever stepping out into the revealing light of the sun. We find ourselves losing all track of time in the sheer detail of the map. The fine, elegant lines of the pen creating a hidden world of bricked-over arches, forgotten reservoirs, and silent tunnels that exist just inches beneath the feet of the unsuspecting crowds above. Then comes the reveal, delivered not with a shout of triumph, but with a quiet, devastating clarity that settles into the mind like a soft weight. Holmes pauses in his work, his pen hovering just a fraction of an inch above the vellum. He points with a long, pale finger to a specific intersection of symbols near the Lambeth Bridge. He observes, in a voice as smooth as silk, that the placement of these books was never a matter of blind chance, nor were they merely lost to the indifferent river during a storm. The coordinates hidden in the marginalia match the exact, precise locations where each volume was eventually recovered by the mudlarks and the dockworkers. The books were not washed away. They were planted with surgical precision. Someone is deliberately placing these sacred volumes in the secret watercourses of London, using the natural tides as a slow, rhythmic delivery system to ensure they reach the surface at specific, calculated intervals. It is an intentional, slow-motion resurrection of the Pike Library, a trail of breadcrumbs designed to lead a specific type of mind toward a very specific, hidden destination. This realization brings with it a profound and lasting sense of peace. There is no longer the chaotic static of the unknown, only the beautiful order of a master design. We are not lost. We are being guided. We find ourselves relaxing deeply into the certainty of the pattern, the mind no longer straining to understand a riddle, but simply following the natural flow of the current. The room feels safer and more secluded than ever before, for we are no longer just accidental investigators. We are the invited guests of a brilliant hidden intellect that has waited 20 years to be understood. The fire in the grate settles further, the wood turning to a soft, glowing charcoal that radiates a deep, penetrating heat that seems to reach into our very bones, to ground us even further in this state of absolute tranquility. We focus our attention on the methodical, repetitive sounds of the room. We listen to the steady, rhythmic scratching of Holmes's pen as he takes exhaustive, meticulous notes in his large, leather-bound ledger. It is a dry, satisfying, and hypnotic sound, the sound of perfect order being imposed upon the vast void of history. The scratching is punctuated only by the occasional soft clink of a glass stopper, or the gentle, heavy rustle of a turning page. These are the sounds of a mind at rest in its work. a scholarly lullaby that tells us everything is being recorded, everything is being accounted for, and everything is exactly as it should be. We breathe in the sharp, clean scent of the fresh ink and feel every remaining tension of the day melting away into the dark mahogany of the table. The map is now complete in its physical form, but it is a map of the present, of the here and now. To truly understand the deeper purpose behind this aquatic trail, we must look back at the origins of the mystery. The transition of our focus is as soft and natural as a shadow moving across a moonlit wall. Holmes closes his ledger with a muffled, resonant thud, his eyes still fixed on the intricate, shimmering web of lines he has drawn upon the vellum. He notes that the Pike Library fire of 1872 was not just an ending, as the world believed, but a beginning, a clever and successful smokescreen for a much larger, more silent theft of human knowledge. To find the heart of the flame that didn't consume, we must go to the place where the official records of the catastrophe are kept, buried under the immense weight of institutional silence and the dust of decades. We prepare to leave the warmth and the safety of the sitting room once more, but we do not leave our sense of inner stillness behind. We are moving toward the British Library, toward the great, echoing dome of history, where the ghosts of 1872 are filed away in perfect numerical order. The journey is a necessary step, but the mind remains in its state of quiet, rhythmic focus, unhurried and calm. We follow the invisible lines of the map we have just drawn, moving from the secrets of the water to the secrets of the archive, fully confident that the trail of ink will eventually lead us to the one who has been waiting for us in the dark for so many years. The pen is set aside, the lamp is dimmed to a low, golden glow, and we move together, side by side, into the next deep layer of the silence. We leave the shifting, unpredictable currents of the Thames and the intricate ink-drawn map on our mahogany table to seek a profound refuge in a different kind of sanctuary, one built of cold stone, absolute silence, and the collective, long-buried memory of mankind. The transition is a gradual, hypnotic immersion into a world of hallowed and undisturbed quiet. We find ourselves standing before the grand, imposing facade of the British Museum, its massive fluted columns rising like the trunks of ancient, petrified trees against the soft, charcoal gray sky of London. As we pass through the heavy entrance, the city's distant and chaotic roar, the metallic clatter of wheels, the sharp calls of street vendors, and the persistent whistling of the wind is abruptly and cleanly severed. We are immediately enveloped in a deep architectural stillness that seems to press gently against the skin. We move with slow, unhurried steps toward the great reading room, that magnificent, soaring dome of human knowledge, where the very air feels weighted with the invisible gravity of a million silent thoughts. Entering the great dome is like stepping into a vast cathedral of the mind. The space is immense, yet it feels strangely intimate and protective, as if the thousands of leather-bound volumes lining the circular walls are leaning in, hushed and expectant, to listen to the rhythm of our own heartbeat. The light here is filtered, ancient, and soft, descending from the high, vaulted windows in long, dusty shafts of pale gold that illuminate the slow, eternal dance of microscopic particles in the air. The floor beneath our feet is polished to a mirror-like sheen, reflecting the dim glow of the lamps, and our footsteps are reduced to faint, rhythmic pulses that are immediately absorbed by the heavy, velvet silence of the room. This is the ultimate intellectual sanctuary, a place where time is no longer measured by the mechanical ticking of a clock, but by the slow, deliberate, and meaningful turning of a fragile page. We take our seats at one of the long, radiating desks of dark, Solid oak, the wood feeling cool, smooth, and grounded against our hand. The scent of the room is intoxicatingly peaceful. A thick, nourishing aroma of aged parchment, old beeswax polish, and the faint, sweet, and metallic scent of drying ink from centuries past. Sherlock Holmes moves with the practiced, effortless reverence of a monk in a scriptorium, his lean presence blending seamlessly into the scholarly atmosphere. He has requested the private, restricted papers and the original prescribed list of Reverend Pike, the brilliant and troubled man whose legendary library was supposed to have vanished entirely into smoke in the summer of 1872. As the library attendant brings the requested boxes, the soft, muffled thud of the heavy cardboard on the oak desk feels like a final, satisfying period at the end of a long and wandering sentence. We begin our deep, silent dive into the ancient lore of the forbidden and the suppressed. As we look through the fragile records, we are introduced to the inner workings of Reverend Pike's mind, a man who was not merely a collector of rare books, but a dedicated seeker of dangerous, hidden, and profound truth. His prescribed literature was a collection of everything the established order of his time feared. Gnostic fragments that spoke of a different version of creation, heretical gospels that challenged the very foundations of the church, and ancient, crumbling scrolls that hinted at a knowledge much older than the empires themselves. To read his private notes is to feel the slow, steady heat of a quiet, intellectual rebellion. His views were not loud, angry, or violent, but they were persistent and inevitable, like the constant dripping of water wearing away at a solid stone. We lose ourselves in the elegant, flowing, and rhythmic script of his journals, feeling the quiet passion of a man who believed that the deepest truths of the world should belong to everyone, not just to those who sat in the high, cold cathedrals. As we turn the yellowed pages together, the body of our investigation begins to reveal a darker, more deliberate shadow lurking behind the history. Holmes's eyes narrow with a focused intensity as he compares the official fire department reports of 1872 with a set of private, uncatalogued correspondences he has uncovered in the bottom of a cedar box. Here, in the muffled and sacred silence of the reading room, the reveal emerges with a quiet, undeniable, and heavy weight. The Church of England itself had intervened in the immediate and chaotic aftermath of the Pike Library fire. There are official, high-level requests, stamped with the heavy violet seal of the Archdeaconry, to systematically withdraw all detailed records of the fire and its subsequent investigation from the public archives. The reports were not merely lost to time or neglect. They were carefully and professionally removed. The fire of 1872 was not just a tragic disaster. It was a controlled erasure, a cold, institutional attempt to ensure that Pike's heretical and dangerous collection would never again be mentioned or remembered in the official annals of history. This realization does not disturb our inner peace. It only serves to deepen the sense that we are on a sacred and necessary quest. We feel a profound, soul-deep connection to the past, a sense of quiet responsibility to the man whose life's work was consigned to the cold shadows by those in power. The room remains a sturdy fortress of tranquility around us, a shield against the noise of the modern world. We lean back in our heavy chairs, closing our eyes for a long moment, to breathe in the hollow, dust-sweet air of the archive. We listen to the distant, rhythmic, and hypnotic turning of pages from a solitary scholar across the vast room. They sound as steady and as soothing as a resting heartbeat. The world outside the dome, with its politics, its noise, and its endless power struggles, feels utterly irrelevant and distant. Here, in the silent heart of the archive, the only thing that truly matters is the preservation of the sacred word. The smell of the old parchment becomes our primary anchor, a scent that speaks of a quiet survival against all the odds of the world. We run our fingers very lightly over the edge of a document, feeling the slight, pleasant roughness of the handmade paper, a direct tactile connection to the hands that held and wrote upon it more than a century ago. We are perfectly safe here, protected by the immense and silent weight of the books that surround us on every side, a literal wall of human wisdom that shields us from the chaos and the uncertainty of the present moment. The silence of the dome is a healing thing, a soft, heavy blanket that allows the mind to focus entirely on the intricate, glowing threads of the mystery without the jarring distraction of noise, hurry, or light. But as the late afternoon light begins to slowly fade, shifting from a warm gold to a deep, contemplative, and somber blue, a new and powerful thought begins to form in the profound stillness of our minds. If the church went to such extreme lengths to erase the official records of the fire, it was because they knew, with absolute certainty, that the fire had failed its primary and destructive purpose. The reveal of the suppressed and hidden documents leads us to a singular, inevitable, and quiet conclusion. Reverend Pike's house may have burned to the ground, but his secrets, the true core of his dangerous and beautiful collection, did not perish in the flames. They were moved, they were hidden, and they were preserved by a hand that understood the predictable tides of the Thames far better than the erratic heat of the fire. The transition from the library to the next stage of our journey is as soft, quiet, and final as the closing of a heavy leather-bound book. We rise slowly from the radiating oak desk, our minds filled with the vivid images of Pike's forbidden gospels and the long bureaucratic shadows cast by the church. We leave the great silent dome of the British Museum, carrying the deep silence of the reading room within us as we step back out into the cool, refreshing evening air. The city of London is beginning to fold itself into the night, the gas lamps flickering to life in the gathering violet mist. We move now with a new, quiet, and steady purpose, realizing that to find the physical remains of the library, we must go to the one place where the records were first erased, the long, dark shadow of Lambeth Palace itself. The secrets survived the fire, and now they are waiting patiently for us to find them in the deep, silent reaches of the city's hidden and drowned history. The transition from the grand, public majesty of the British Museum to the secluded, ancient shadows of Lambeth is a journey into the very marrow of London's hidden history. We leave the great, silent dome behind, moving across the cooling city as the afternoon sun begins to surrender its strength to a sullen, bruised sky of violet and slate. The air grows noticeably heavy with the scent of damp stone and the peculiar, static chill that lingers around places of immense age and stagnant, undisturbed power. We find ourselves crossing the vast courtyard of Lambeth Palace, our heavy boots striking the uneven flagstones with a rhythmic, muffled cadence that seems to echo back from the centuries-old walls. The sky above is a flat, unyielding gray, pressing down upon the jagged stone battlements and the leaden roof of the archive, creating an atmosphere of profound isolation and deeply focused intent. As we enter the archives, the vibrant world of the living feels increasingly remote and insignificant. The air here is fundamentally different from the scholar's dome. It is thicker, much cooler, and carries a faint, sharp undertone of cedar wood and cold, ancient iron. This is not a place for public study or casual curiosity, but a fortress for the permanent storage of things that the world was officially meant to forget. The silence here is absolute, yet it feels strangely alive, a heavy, patient presence that watches us from the long rows of darkened, iron-bound chests and heavy wooden crates. We move deeper into the subterranean heart of the palace, guided only by the flickering warm light of a single lantern that Holmes carries with a steady, unhurried, and practiced hand. The long shadows stretch and yawn along the cold stone floor, reaching toward the dark corners where the thick dust of the 19th century has settled in heavy, undisturbed layers. We settle into the slow work of discovery, the emotional goal of this hour being a complete, hypnotic immersion into the physical reality of the mystery. Holmes directs our attention toward a particular shelf, hidden behind a heavy moth-eaten curtain of dark velvet that smells of centuries of stillness. There, tucked inside a nondescript folder of ecclesiastical accounts, we find the censorship memorandum of the year 1873. It is a document of chilling, bureaucratic precision, written in a cold, analytical hand that knows no emotion. It details the necessary containment of the pipe collection and lists the specific, forbidden titles that were to be removed from the public consciousness forever. As we read the list in the dim light, we feel the immense weight of the suppression, the silence that was forced upon a brilliant mind by the hands of power. The paper is stiff, brittle, and yellowed, crackling softly under our touch like a warning whispered from a long-dead ghost. It is in this state of deep and total concentration that we become aware of another presence in the room. We are not alone in the cold heart of the archives. From the corner of our eye, nestled in the deep velvet shadows between two towering stacks of heavy ledgers, we see him, a tall, unmoving figure in a heavy gray woolen coat. He does not move toward us, nor does he speak a single word. He simply stands there, a solid silhouette of charcoal against the gray stone, his face completely obscured by the brim of a low-hanging, weathered hat. The air in the room seems to grow even colder, more still, and more expectant. There is no sense of immediate or jagged danger, but rather a profound, vibrating awareness that we are being observed. The man in gray is not a thief, nor is he a common guard. He is a watcher, a silent, eternal sentinel who has inhabited these deep shadows for much longer than we have been in this room. The reveal of his purpose settles into our consciousness with a quiet, resonant clarity that feels like a weight being lifted. As Holmes slowly adjusts the lantern to cast a wider arc of light, the glow catches the gray figure's hand. He is holding a small, leather-bound volume, the fourth book of the Rising Sequence. He is not hiding the book from us. He is preparing it. We realize in a moment of breathtaking stillness that the Watcher is not guarding the library against its discovery. He is guiding the books back into the world of the living. He is the hand behind the tides, the quiet architect of the trail of ink and breadcrumbs. He has been waiting in this cold, lightless vault for over 20 years, releasing the fragile survivors of the fire one by one, ensuring that the truth survives the very institutions that once sought to drown it. He is a librarian of the shadows, a curator of the lost and the forgotten. This realization brings with it a surprising and deep sense of peace, a return to a state of absolute safety. The tension of the encounter dissolves into a shared, silent understanding between seekers of the truth. We are on the same side of the great secret. To ground ourselves in this new reality, we focus our attention on the small, rhythmic, and mechanical details of the room. We listen to the steady, metallic ticking of Holmes's silver pocket watch, a rhythmic heartbeat that anchors us firmly in the present moment. The sound is sharp, regular, and predictable, a great comfort against the vast, yawning silence of the subterranean archives. We watch the fading light of our lantern as it reflects off the brass fittings of the old shelves, creating small, golden orbs that pulse in time with the rhythm of our own breathing. The world has become very small and very safe now, reduced to this singular circle of light and the shared knowledge of a hidden, faithful protector. The scent of the archives, the cold, damp stone, the cedar, and the ancient, sweet dust becomes a soothing and familiar present, a reminder that some things in this world are too heavy to be moved and too deep to ever truly be forgotten. We feel the profound security of being in a place where history is kept and honored, protected by stone walls that have stood for nearly 1,000 years. The man in gray remains in his shadow, a silent, unmoving partner in our investigation. His presence is steady, reliable, and unremarkable as the stone pillars themselves. We breathe in the stillness of the air, letting the complexity of the plot and the history settle into a simple, beautiful pattern of light and dark, of fire and water. But as the steady ticking of the pocket watch marks the passage of the late hour, the need for a final, decisive action begins to take hold in Holmes's mind. The transition is as smooth and inevitable as the closing of a heavy vault door. Holmes closes the censorship memorandum with a muffled thud and looks directly toward the watcher. Though he does not address him with words, he observes, in a low murmur, that to catch a librarian of the shadows, one must create a situation that requires his final intervention. The books are being delivered, but the final, most dangerous, and most beautiful volume of the original Pike collection remains hidden in the dark. We must now lay a trap, not a trap of iron, chains, or force, but one of intellect, patience, and opportunity. We must prepare a space where the man in gray feels safe enough to deliver the final piece of the great puzzle. We leave the subterranean vault, moving back toward the surface with a steady, purposeful intent, carrying the silence of the watcher with us as we prepare to invite the mystery to its final, firelit resolution in the lamplight of Baker Street. The investigation moves now from the cold, institutional stone of the subterranean archives to the fading, amber warmth of a long-held human memory. The transition is a delicate, almost imperceptible shift in tone, leaving the grand, dusty mysteries of the church and the dark currents of the Thames behind to seek the quiet, flickering truth held by those who were there when the world first broke apart in flame. We find ourselves traveling toward the quiet outskirts of London, where the air is noticeably softer, smelling of distant wood smoke, damp earth, and the faint, sweet promise of the coming spring. Our destination is a small, ivy-covered cottage nestled in the riverside reaches of Chelsea, the humble home of Mr. Dunn, an old fire engine driver who survived the great and terrible Pike Library Inferno of 1872. The movement and noise of the city fade into a gentle, rhythmic hum as we approach his wooden door, the world growing smaller, quieter, and more intimate with every slow step we take upon the garden path. Inside the cottage, the atmosphere is thick and comforting, saturated with the nostalgic scent of beeswax polish, dried lavender, and the slow-burning peat in the hearth. Mr. Dunn is a man carved from sturdy oak, now deeply weathered by the passage of time and the lingering heat of 100 fires from his youth. He sits by a small, tidy hearth, his large, calloused hands resting heavily and peacefully upon his knees. As he begins to speak, his voice is a low, gravelly rumble that carries the immense weight of 23 years of absolute silence. He does not tell a story of terror or panic, but one of haunting, quiet beauty that lingers in the air like a song. He describes the night of the fire not as a chaotic roar of destructive flames, but as a vast sea of golden, shimmering light that seemed to swallow the thousands of books whole, as if the knowledge itself were returning to the sun. And then, with a trembling breath, he speaks of the one detail that was never recorded in the official logs: the pale, slender young man who crawled from the collapsing ruins of the library, his woolen coat smoldering, and his thin arms clutching a single, heavy wooden crate, as if it were his own flesh and blood. This young man was Elias Hartwell, a junior archivist who had been Reverend Pike's most devoted and quiet assistant. Mr. Dunn describes how the boy's wide eyes reflected the dying, red embers of the library, filled with a grief so profound and so silent, it seemed to hush the very sirens of the fire engines and the shouts of the crowds. Hartwell did not run toward help. He simply vanished into the thick, swirling fog of the riverbank, a ghost carrying the only remaining fragments of a destroyed and slandered legacy. Hearing this account, we feel a deep, nostalgic melancholy, a sense of profound empathy for the boy who lost his world but refused to surrender his sense of duty. The mystery is no longer a cold puzzle of ink and parchment. It has become a living story of human devotion, a silent, decades-long vigil kept in the darkness for the sake of the light. The body of the mystery now leads us toward the final, most peaceful sanctuary of all. Guided by the flickering lamp of Mr. Dunn's memory, we travel further west to a quiet, sun-drenched room in Richmond, where the air is perfectly still and the light is as soft as a prayer. Here, in the afternoon glow, we finally find Elias Hartwell. He is no longer the pale, desperate boy from the ruins of the fire, but a frail, elderly man, resting peacefully in a bed of cool, white linen. The room is filled with the rhythmic, hypnotic, and steady sound of his breathing, a soft, wheezing sigh that marks the slow, inevitable passage of time. The emotional goal of this moment is one of total, unadulterated peace. We sit beside his bed, watching the sunlight dance in the slow-moving dust motes above his hand-stitched quilt, and realize that we are finally in the presence of the watcher himself. The reveal settles over the room like a soft, heavy blanket of wool. Hartwell, from this very deathbed, has been the one releasing the books into the water. He knew his own time was growing short, and he could not bear the heavy thought of aught. Pike's sacred knowledge remaining buried forever in the dark silt of the Thames. He has been hiring the young messenger boys with his meager savings, calculating the complex tides of the river with the mathematical precision of a man who has lived his entire life by the rhythm of the rising and falling water. He has been sending the fragile survivors of the fire back into the living world one by one, a final, beautiful act of redemption for the library he could not save from the flames so long ago. He is not a criminal or a thief. He is a curator of the impossible, ensuring that the truth finds its way back to the light of day before his own breath, finally and peacefully, fails him. To ground ourselves in this state of profound tranquility, we focus our entire attention on the small, tactile details of the quiet sick room. We listen to the steady, paper-thin rustle of the quilt as Hartwell moves his tired hand, a sound as gentle as the wind moving through the autumn trees. We focus our own rhythm on the soft, rhythmic wheeze of his breath, a natural, biological metronome that invites us to slow our own breathing. Sinking deeper and deeper into the comfort of the velvet chair, the scent of the room is clean, medicinal, and immensely soothing, a mixture of peppermint tea, old parchment, and the faint, sweet aroma of drying white lilies on the windowsill. The world outside the window is a distant, fading memory. Here, in the presence of a life's work coming to its noble end, there is only the beauty of a secret finally shared and a burden finally lifted. As we sit in the deepening golden twilight of the room, Hartwell reaches out with a thin, trembling hand, his fingers brushing against a small, worn piece of parchment tucked carefully beneath the edge of his pillow. He does not speak, for words are no longer necessary, but his weary eyes convey a silent, urgent, and absolute trust. This is the final piece of the map we have been following through the fog. As we take the parchment from him, we feel the lingering warmth of his skin and the immense, invisible weight of the responsibility he is passing into our care. It contains the final, precise coordinates, not for a wharf, a pier, or a muddy bank, but for the hidden subterranean vault or the heart of the original Pike collection. The final and most dangerous volume of all has been waiting in the silence for 23 long years. The transition to the final chapter of our journey is as soft, quiet, and inevitable as the closing of a weary eye at the end of a long day. We leave the quiet, sunlit room in Richmond, carrying the final coordinates and the hypnotic memory of Hartwell's rhythmic breath within our heart. The mystery is no longer a trail of breadcrumbs to be solved. It is a direct, peaceful path into the very heart of the city's secret and sacred history. We move back toward the center of London, the gas lamps beginning to flicker to life in the blue hour of evening, feeling the profound safety of a mission that is now nearly complete. The final vault is waiting for us in the dark, and the gentle ghost of Elias Hartwell walks with us in the silence, guiding our steps toward the one light that the fire could not extinguish and the water could not hide. The long, winding journey reaches its silent and inevitable conclusion, not in a place of chaotic noise or sudden confrontation, but at the very edge of the physical world, where the dark river meets the heavy sky in a seamless, eternal embrace of silver mist. The transition to this final destination is the softest and most rhythmic of all, a slow, purposeful drift through the deep heart of the London night. It is now 2 o'clock in the morning, the singular hour when the city's frantic pulse is at its absolute lowest, and a thick, suffocatingly beautiful silver-white fog has descended upon the Thames. This mist swallows the harsh outlines of the riverside warehouses and the skeletal fingers of the distant cranes, reducing the world to a series of soft, indistinct shapes. We stand at the very edge of the river, near a long-forgotten inlet in the shadow of the Lambeth marshes, where the cold water laps against the ancient, slime-covered stone with a rhythmic liquid sigh that seems to echo the passage of centuries. The air is cold, heavy with dampness, and incredibly still, carrying the primal scent of deep-sea salt and the wet green life of the hidden riverbeds. There is a profound sense of awe in this total isolation, a feeling that we have stepped completely outside of time itself to stand at the threshold of a great and sacred secret. Guided by the final precise coordinates from Elias Hartwell's trembling hand, Holmes leads us with a quiet confidence toward a low, moss-covered stone archway that has been effectively hidden by the rising and falling tides for an entire generation. The stone here is slick, ancient, and cold to the touch, smoothed by the relentless, patient passage of the dark water. Yet it holds a structural strength that the heat of a fire could never hope to touch. With a slow, deliberate, and steady pressure, Holmes finds the hidden iron catcha, simple lever, rusted by the salt of the river, but still perfectly functional after decades of waiting. As the heavy stone slab grinds open with a low, resonant, and vibrating hum, the sound is not a jar to the weary nerves, but a deep, satisfying frequency that echoes in the very marrow of our bones. We descend together into the dark, our movements slow, reverent, and heavy, leaving the misty, shifting world above for the absolute, unchanging, and hallowed silence of the subterranean vault. Inside, the vault is a sanctuary of profound shadow and cool stone. The main body of the hidden room is filled with neat, orderly, and patient stacks of bundles wrapped in heavy, oil-stained canvas, the same protective, waterproof skin that has guarded every survivor we found along the lonely riverbanks. As Holmes moves the lantern, its light carefully filtered through a green-tinted glass to protect the fragile and ancient contents, the entire room is suddenly bathed in a soft, ethereal, and emerald glow. This emerald light dances and ripples off the damp stone walls, creating the mesmerizing sensation of being underwater, safe within a submerged bubble of perfectly preserved history. The air here is cool, heavy, and smells deeply of cedar wood, ancient dust, and the sharp, clean ozone of the hidden river. It is an atmosphere of total, unadulterated serenity, a place where the frantic and noisy pace of the 19th century simply cannot reach. The final reveal is a visual payoff of breathtaking and quiet proportions. Holmes carefully and slowly unwraps the central bundle, his long fingers moving with the grace and precision of a master surgeon. As the heavy canvas falls away, it reveals not just books, but a glowing legacy of human thought. There, preserved by the very fear that once sought to utterly destroy them, lie the lost and legendary Gospels of Mary and Judas ancient, vellum codices that speak of a different world and a much deeper, more complex truth. These are the dangerous texts that the High Church attempted to erase forever in the fire of 1872, now resting peacefully and securely in the emerald gloom of the vault. To see them here, entirely untouched by the hunger of the flames and shielded for 20 years by the weight of the water, is to witness the ultimate and quiet victory of the written word over the forces of silence and erasure. They are beautiful in their immense age, their black ink still dark and purposeful upon the page, their secrets waiting patiently for a world that is finally kind enough to read them without judgment. We spend a long, unhurried, and profound moment simply existing in the presence of this hidden gold at the end of our long journey. The vault is a place of ultimate safety, a subterranean cradle where the most fragile secrets of humanity are kept in a state of perfect, chilled, and silent preservation. The gentle, rhythmic glow of the emerald lantern pulses in time with the steady rhythm of our own breathing, and the distant, muffled sound of the great Thames flowing steadily overhead acts as a natural, liquid lullaby. We feel the immense weight of the entire journey finally falling away from our shoulders, replaced by a sense of deep and lasting fulfillment. The mystery is solved, the drowned library is found, and the truth is safe within the heart of the stone. We return finally to the familiar and protective embrace of Baker Street, the long journey coming full circle as the deep night begins its final, heavy fold over the rooftops of London. The transition is a gradual and total release of all remaining tension, a slow, weightless sinking into the warmth and the comfort of our home. We stand together at the high window of the sitting room, looking out at the vast world we have just navigated through the fog and the tide. The mist has grown even thicker now, a vast, silent, and white ocean that has completely swallowed the gas lamps and reduced the city to a collection of soft, distant, and glowing amber blurs. The world outside is a dream, and we are the only ones left awake to witness its beauty. The fire in our grate has burned down to a deep, pulsing, and glowing red, casting long, peaceful, and dancing shadows across the ceiling that move with the slow, rhythmic sighing of the night wind in the chimney. Sherlock Holmes stands beside us, his profile a sharp, calm silhouette against the dark glass of the window. He holds the final catalog in his hand, but his gaze is fixed on the indifferent, eternal roll of the Thames in the distance. In his quiet, melodic, and low voice, he delivers the final decision of our long investigation. He observes that, while we have found the very heart of the Pike collection, the world of 1895 is not yet ready for the immense truths contained within those emerald-lit vaults. The fear that sparked the fire of 1872 still lingers in the cold halls of power, and to reveal the library now would be to invite its destruction once more. The truth is a fire, and sometimes it must be kept under a protective bushel until the winds of the world are finally right. The reveal of this decision is soft and final, a conceptual closure that brings with it a sense of ultimate tranquility. The library is secured, its location known only to a few trusted friends, and the silent, faithful watcher in the gray woolen coat. It remains beneath the stone, a dormant seed of knowledge waiting for a future age, a time when humanity is finally ready to listen to the voices of the past without the primitive urge to silence them. We realize now that our true mission was not to publish the truth to a noisy world, but to preserve it in the quiet. The library is safe. The debt to the dying Elias Hartwell is fully paid, and the secrets have returned to their rightful place in the hallowed, watery shadows of history. As we move away from the window, the room feels like the safest and most secluded place in the entire existence of man. The soft, rhythmic, and mechanical ticking of the clock on the mantel is the only remaining sound, a steady, comforting heartbeat that counts down the final, peaceful moments of the long day. The scent of the room tobacco, old books, and the fading, sweet warmth of the wood fire is a familiar and deeply soothing presence that invites the entire body to surrender to the coming night. We settle back into the deep, soft cushions of the armchair, feeling the heavy, pleasant weight of our limbs and the slow, steady rhythm of our own heart. All the questions have been answered. All the trails have been followed to their end, and there is absolutely nothing left to do but rest. The fog continues to swirl and pulse against the cold glass, a soft, white, and protective curtain that separates us from the noise, the hurry, and the worry of the outside world. The Thames rolls on in the darkness, indifferent and steady, its heavy liquid movement a constant reminder of the eternal and peaceful flow of time. We feel the last of the tension leaving our neck, our shoulders, and our tired hands, flowing out of us like the tide receding slowly from the shore. The mystery has dissolved into a state of pure, unadulterated, and perfect peace, leaving behind only the quiet, warm satisfaction of a task well done and a secret well kept. This is the final invitation to sleep. We allow the vivid images of the emerald vault, the misty silver river, and the ink-stained parchment to slip slowly back into the deep shadows of the mind. The story is complete, the heavy book is closed, and the silence that follows is a precious gift. The secrets are safe in the earth, and we are safe in this room. As the very last embers of the fire fade into the soft dark, we allow ourselves to drift away on the gentle current of the night, letting go of the truth, letting go of the search, and falling finally into the deep, restorative, and infinite embrace of a dreamless sleep. Good night, London. Good night, Baker Street. The truth is waiting for a future tomorrow. For now, there is only the quiet and the dark and the peace.